Okie doke. All right. Okay. Thank you guys. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. My name is Ada Shen and I'm the National Chair for Democrats Abroad France. We are here today to honor and celebrate our dear friend and colleague, Connie Board. Connie is a former chair and vice chair, serially, of Democrats Abroad France, and she's recently completed her second term as a member of the DNC representing Democrats Abroad. For many, she, along with Joe Smallhoover, have defined what it even means to be a Democrat abroad in France. They've been doing this together since the 80s, and today, Democrats Abroad is present in 140 countries around the world and with over 40 chapters. DA France itself has now grown to 12,000 members. With us tonight are Julia Bryan, the Global Chair of Democrats Abroad, Reed Kennedy, the Chair of our Paris chapter, Sheila Malavany Chevalier, the Women's Caucus founding co-chair, along with Connie, Jean-Pierre Larochelle, who's the host of Political Forum, Douglas Glucroft, former chair of Democrats Abroad France, and joining us in the call in a bit will be Martha McDevitt-Pugh, DNC member, Adrian George, DNC member. Also with us is Bob Vallier, who's formerly a member of our ExCom in France and who's now vice chair of Italy. And last, but certainly not least, will be a very special guest and former member of Democrats Abroad France, Representative Jamie Raskin of the Maryland 8th District. If you have questions for us, please put them in the Q&A box and we will try to respond to them over the course of the evening. Before we get underway, I do want to remind folks that if you have registered to vote or requested your overseas absentee ballot earlier this year and asked for it to be sent to you by email or online, you should have received your ballot by now. If not, please check first with your local election officials. Actually, please check first with your spam folder. And if you still don't see it, then please check with your local elections officials to make sure it is on its way. If you still need to register or request a ballot, it is not too late. You can still do this, but deadlines are approaching fast. Please go to votefromabroad.org right away. That is votefromabroad.org. I also want to say a big thank you to all of you who have donated tonight. Your contributions support our critical get out the vote efforts across France. There are enough voters just in France. If we can mobilize every American voter in France, we can make a difference in close races this year back in the United States. For those who have not donated yet, I will put a donation link into the chat box. And if you have any issues making that donation, please email, also include the email for the treasurer and or for myself. Go ahead and do that in the chat. See. Okay. Okie doke. Julia, can you tell us why this is so important, these efforts?
Well, absolutely. And first of all, I just thanks everyone for joining us, and thanks Ada for inviting me. It's actually a real honor. I adore Connie, and it's, you know, she's been my mentor and the person I've looked up to as a role model for ever since I got involved with the global organization. So it's just amazing to be here. But the thing I wanted to say, and I think we all know this, is that democracy is on the line and in this election, and we are fighting. We must do everything we can to get every single vote that's available for the Democrats to the United States and to our local election offices. And the money that we raise helps do that, because so many Americans abroad don't know they can vote. They don't know how to vote, and they don't know that their vote counts. And so the work that we are doing in our outreach starts by letting them know this information, then by helping them through a simple tool that really walks them through the process. And then we help them with the logistics too. And never ever forget the logistics. It's really important. It's kind of a boring thing to talk about, but my God, when you're sitting there trying to do origami with your ballot, you're really happy when you have someone who you can call up and get some help with that. I really recommend it. And this is what our volunteers are able to do. And we're able to reach so many people because of our work. So, you know, the thing that I always remember with Americans Abroad is that we are the margin of victory for so many elections back at home. There's 1 in 25 elections are decided by a 1% margin. That's where we make a difference. And so I always tell the DNC and I tell the state parties, when an American Abroad votes, a Democrat back home wins, because we are really a very, very blue party indeed. And we are in states that really make a difference. We've won elections in Florida. We've won statewide elections in New Hampshire with Senator Maggie Hassan, and we've won statewide elections in North Carolina. You know, with North Carolina and Florida, we're going to win the White House this year potentially, and I think that is just so exciting. And again, we just cannot leave any vote behind. I could talk more, but I know that we have other people on the agenda, so I'll hand the mic back to Ada.
Thank you so much, Julia. So everyone, your donations to DA France help us fund advertising, text banking, postcards to battleground state voters, and they support our nonpartisan voter registration effort, whether it's virtually via Zoom, by email or phone, or in person across France. We have a few short weeks to pack the biggest punch we can. Joe?
Thanks, Ada. Thank you all for participating. As Julia just said, this is the reason that we're here. Not simply to celebrate Connie and the work of Democrats Abroad, but to make sure we actually get out the vote. I'm very happy my ballot from Los Angeles County turned up this morning, and it will be voted first thing in the morning tomorrow. But I want to talk a little bit, just very briefly, about some of the history of Democrats Abroad France, because many of you don't know exactly all the wonderful and extraordinary things that we've done, and I'll be quick. Democrats Abroad was founded, as some of you know, but not everyone, in France with Al Davidson and with Toby Hyde in London in 1964. The party was recognized, we were recognized by the National Committee in 1976, and Democrats Abroad France has been active since our founding in 1964. Some of the people that we've been able to bring to Paris as the forefront, as one of the leading country committees of Democrats Abroad. We've had several national chairs, David Wilhelm, Ron Brown, Howard Dean. Just to mention a few, we had the meeting of the Association of State Democratic Chairs. We've had many senators, most recently Doug Jones, Tim Kaine, who was also not simply a senator, but also a chairman of the party. We had Teresa Heinz Carey come to speak, in fact, at Connie's home. And in fact, my daughter at the time was only 5 years old, and she didn't know, we had not said that Teresa Heinz Carey was coming to speak. We just told her Teresa Carey, but she'd been paying attention, and she went, "Oh, tell her I love her ketchup." Children pay attention to our messages too. You know, we have gone from a handful of people, probably 15 or 20 in 1964, to 12,000. You said, Julia, over 12,000 in France. This little event in honor of Connie's efforts over the last 35 years has raised a little bit more than 4,000, and if some of you will add a little bit more, that will be helpful, because we have a lot more things to do. But one of the greatest things about Democrats Abroad is that, in fact, our dollars go further than they do back home. The overseas vote is low-hanging fruit, and we can mobilize that vote for a much less cost than our friends back home, because people don't know, but we're doing a great job. And it's actually extraordinarily exciting to see videos being made, not simply by Democrats Abroad, but by just citizens telling other citizens abroad to come out and vote. And I think that's extraordinary. When Connie and I started together in the early 80s, we decided it was a shame that there were so few people interested, and we started having dinners once a month to sort of figure out how we could be visible. And it got to the point, in fact, where there was an event, at least 1 or 2 events of Democrats Abroad in France, in Paris, at least 2 a week, and sometimes 3. And I remember at one point, Connie had a small dinner party, and it was just friends. But one of the people at the dinner table said, is this dinner free tonight, or do we have to pay? Because we had been so successful in building a team in Paris, and actually asking all of our friends to contribute, that we went from those 12 people to now 12,000. And I think that's extraordinary. I'm very happy. I'm sad to see Connie step down from the DNC. I'm happy to be replacing her for the next 4 years. But I'm even more happy to see, as some among our panelists, a number of young people who are the future of the party. And I can't see all the rest of the people attending, but I'm sure that there are many young people out there, and that's exciting. And we want to bring the message of what we've done so that you can build on that in the future. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Joe. I also want to give special thanks to our host committee members for all of your support tonight. That includes Connie, Vivian Cruz, Sybil Dorigny, Helen and Ronald Freeman, Doug Lucroft, Meredith Gowan-Legoff, Lois Grabine, Heather Keene, Reed Kennedy, Anna Lascar, James Lieber, Bill McGurn, Zachary Miller, Veronica Pollard, Carla Rosen Vasher, Chip Seward, Joe Smallhoover, Scott Stroud, Sally Schwartz, Bob Valier, and Deborah Weiss. We could not do this without you, and we are fighting for every vote. Thank you so much.
May I jump in for a second, Ada, and simply say, every former chair and executive vice chair of Democrats Abroad who is still alive is a member of the host committee. And thank you all, as well as every member who's ever served on the DNC from France. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. And now we've actually got a nice video that Chapter's Vice Chair Meredith Wheeler has put together for us. So hang on just a moment while I share that. Bravo. I think everyone's been muted, but you can unmute yourselves. That was just a beautifully done presentation. Thank you so much, Meredith and Connie, for your, or Meredith, for your work on that. That was really marvelous. Thank you so much. It's such a gift. Okay, so Connie, would you like to now say a few words?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Being honored is actually more than I expected, but I love parties, so I certainly couldn't resist this one. I'd like to thank Joe and Ada for drumming up a celebration in these dark times. And especially thank you, Meredith Wheeler, for making one of your iconic and touching photo montages just for this occasion. It's brought back so many great memories of the past 35 years, of winning and losing, of cheering and marching, of laughing and crying, of rooting and scheming, of politics at its best and at its worst moments. And I don't think I have to tell you what the worst moment was for me as a woman. And you can see it on my face on TV when I learned that Trump had won the 2016 election. I've had a great ride over the past 35 years in one of the greatest organizations I can imagine in the world, Democrats Abroad, and more specifically, Democrats Abroad France. Where else could a Brighton, Massachusetts girl have friends home like Howard Dean, Kirsten Gillibrand, Tim Kaine, Doug Jones, to mention a few? And what better reason or excuse could you have to travel round trip in tourists to Hong Kong, South Korea, Vancouver, Kiev, or Costa Rica, again, just to mention a few, for a 3-day annual meeting with volunteer Democrats who dedicate their time and money to building an overseas organization to help people vote. Let me tell you, it has been my pleasure. Here in France, I watched a country develop by leaps and bounds, and I've worked with amazing people, all my friends. I remember when Democrats Abroad was only Paris, as Joe said, and there were just a few of us. Then we added chapters, and now there are 12 very active chapters all over France, still growing and reaching out to voters all over the country. In addition, we have lively caucuses, interest groups that we call policy groups. We love to meet, talk, and try to solve the problems of the world, and we do, through our Democrats Abroad platform, which we draft every 4 years. So what I really think we should be doing tonight, and what I want to do, is to celebrate you, Democrats Abroad France. And hopefully you'll join me in doing that. One more word, and this concerns the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, that is, the Democratic Party. I've been elected to it twice, and both times were extraordinary experiences. From 2004 to 2008, after the unfair and horrible defeats of Al Gore and John Kerry, Howard Dean became the DNC chair and introduced the famous 50-state policy, and we won in 2008. We won the House, the Senate, and the presidency. That's what good party strategy can do. And my recent term, 2016 to 2020, will do the same under the leadership of Tom Perez through the Unity Reform Commission and the revolutionary changes that the party has undergone in these past 4 years. These people are fighters, and the support that they bring to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is immense. But right now, do I have to tell you, we have one big fish to fry. Donald Trump has got to go. We know what lies ahead. Today, as Ruth Bader Ginsburg lies in state in the United States Capitol, Mitch McConnell is poised to ramrod a conservative I can't even think of it, a conservative Trump nominee into her place. It breaks your heart. But there are some silver linings. The court is too political, and it has been for a few years, spared the worst by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. If we can win, and we can, the Senate and the presidency, and stop using the court to make or break laws, that will be progress. And we must begin now, and we have begun. How? That's the story we're really here to talk about tonight. Later on, Jamie Raskin will give us the inside story. But for now, we know there is only one way. Vote, vote, vote. Vote from abroad.org. There's more coming about all of this, and other people will have the chance to speak now. So I think we should continue on with the program, and I'll be back later. Thank you.
So Connie, we actually do have a question from Katie Solon in the chat. And she's saying, yay, Connie, what motivated you to get started with Dems Abroad in the 80s, and what has kept you going? That sign on my wall as background today.
Okay, thank you. Well, I actually was born a Democrat, I guess. And when I found out there was this little group in Paris that would meet regularly, I was happy to join. But as you all know, many of you know, I have 6 kids, so I wasn't very active during the 70s. I was around making posters or doing whatever else I could do, but I didn't take an active part until the late 80s. And I started off with Joe Smallholder. We started in the same year. And I just couldn't resist. I loved every single minute. I loved every minute of being a Democrat. And whether we won or whether we lose, I know that we built a fantastical overseas organization. And that was what I lived for a long time.
Okay. So I actually have a, so Connie, and I have a follow-up question in this. So Connie and Joe basically took Democrats Abroad through the 90s. And I actually want to ask Douglas Glucroft, who's with us, who's a former chair of France. You were active a long time in France before you became chair in the 2000s. As Connie likes to say, they finally found a new victim. Can you tell us?
If I could say a word before Doug speaks, if I just
by way of defense,
the chairmanship and the vice chairmanship, or the chair and the vice chair, nobody ever wanted those jobs. So this went from Joe to me, then back to Joe again, because you can't have too many consecutive terms, but you can run again. Chip Seward stepped in for a while, and then we found a new victim, and that victim was Doug Glucroft, who was a great, fabulous. We were so happy to have him come along. He was a fantastic chair, and I was his vice chair.
Well, thank you, Connie. You are, as that montage of photos really showed, you are the Forrest Gump of Democratic politics abroad. You were at everything and everywhere. And, you know, I got involved in '86. The first time I was in your apartment. And by the way, Connie's apartment has been responsible, I think, is the single biggest fundraising location in all of Europe for Democrats abroad. Senators, everyone's been there. The first time I was there, I was sitting at a dinner table to welcome Ron Brown, who unfortunately passed away some years later, who was then the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. And I said to myself, Connie Boyd is something special, because how did she get the chairman of the DNC into her Paris apartment? Connie has been if you look at the long history of Democrats abroad, I played a bit part in this drama, but you know, Connie's been the Meryl Streep of the affair. And what I want to say is that if everyone listening tonight should feel inspired by Connie's story, and not just inspired in your heart, inspired with your credit cards and your PayPal accounts, to help this group, because it really has developed wonderfully over the years, in large part due to Connie's efforts. And I've donated more money to the various Democratic candidates and causes this year than I ever have before, because I think it's such a critical year. And so I would urge everyone to do the same. I was there, you know, I was chair of the group from 99 to 2003. I was at the Gore-Lieberman convention, which unfortunately, the convention was great. The election did not have a happy ending. But, you know, it's been a wonderful experience. And Connie, just really thank you, because it's people like you who are stars, but who make everyone else around them feel important and valuable, and that they can contribute effectively to the group. And just in case he's in the background, a quick shout out to Dominique Bord, because no man has ever come home to find more strangers in his apartment than Mr. Dominique Bord, first gentleman of Democrats Abroad. So a shout out to Dom. Thank you, and I'll mute myself again. It's great to be here.
Thanks so much for that, Doug. That's awesome. So next, I'd like to ask Martha. You served on the DNC with Connie. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience with her, and what was that like? Are you talking? You may be muted. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, my computer does that sometimes, but good evening, everybody. Hi, Ada. Hi, Connie. Hi, everybody. You know, there's nothing like being on the DNC with Connie. You know, I mean, we come to DNC meetings all, you know, fired up and ready to bring our message about Democrats abroad and meet lots and lots of people. And Connie's the one, you know, we share a hotel room, who's there at like 4 in the morning, organizing an event in Paris, or I don't know what she's doing, but she's like nonstop, completely nonstop, and such an inspiration. And I was trying to think about when I met Connie. I don't even know, but I know that we were at Sheila's apartment in 2006 for an event. Connie, you know, Connie, you're just somebody who creates pathways to leadership for people. So I know you met Bob Brager, who was another DNC member, and said to him, you need to bring your issue to the DNC. So we came to Paris. We talked about what we can do to get immigration rights for Americans with same-sex partners. And it was just like, you know, Connie in the background, just like, you know, come over here and do this and do that. And then, you know, we did the work. But it was just really a terrific experience going in 2007 with you and what I call crashing the DNC, bringing our issue that no one really wanted to hear about, but they heard about it anyway to the DNC. So I think that's, you know, just been since then such an incredible experience to be with you and give the people around us the opportunity to contribute what they had to contribute and to make happen what they want to make happen. And, you know, you're already missed in our DNC group because we're just not complete without you. But, you know, thank you. It's great to hear the stories. It's great to see the film. It's great to see everybody here. And you're an inspiration to me and certainly a role model. So you're there with me at the DNC and wherever I am.
Martha,
Yes.
Martha, I think you're being too modest. I think you should tell how you were able to talk to Obama and he didn't even know. He was about to become president and he didn't even know about the kind of issues that you had.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, that's why we crashed the DNC. That's why we came and we spent 2 months trying to get ourselves 10 minutes on the agenda. But yeah, 2007, and there was a presidential election coming. And in that kind of a year where there's the end of an 8-year term, you know, all the presidential candidates come and they do a beauty contest and they show themselves in the DNC. And Connie suggested that it would be a good idea to be at a cocktail party the night before the DNC started. So Bob Brager, who was traveling over with me, jumped on an airplane a couple hours earlier, last minute. And he had that first conversation with Barack Obama. He introduced himself. He said, you know, I'm Bob. And Obama asked him, you know, where do you live? And he said, I live in Amsterdam. And he got to tell the story about the fact that he was an American citizen with a same-sex partner. His husband's a judge in Amsterdam, and that they don't have the right to live in the United States. And that was really exactly what we needed to do, was to bring that message to people like Barack Obama and others, to make sure that we could win our immigration rights, which happened in 2013. you were really there for that. So I don't know, Connie, I mean, I'm happy to say what I did, but I'm also just really, really happy that you provided those moments where we could make that kind of a difference.
But you made the difference.
There is a photo of Obama's ear when he's hearing this message for the first time.
As I recall, because I was watching this, we have a picture of it somewhere. As I recall, Obama looked at the two of you and said, "That doesn't sound right."
That's not fair.
That's
That's really
not
not fair.
That's not fair, right? Mm. Well, he made major changes, didn't he?
I have to say that the work of the LGBT caucus has been an inspiration to me, and seeing, knowing that Martha and Bob Rager, and I didn't know this backstory about how you guys had to hustle. I came later and I heard about how you guys were able to be effective on issues way out in front on marriage equality. And I said to myself, this is like 2008. I was like, this is an organization I want to know more about. So one of my favorite anecdotes, Connie and Sheila, is about how in the early 90s, Connie hosted the legendary women's rights activist and representative Bella Abzug in her apartment in Paris. Sheila, would you like to tell us a little bit more about what happened that day and what happened next? Oh, Sheila, you are muted. Do you know how to unmute yourself?
Yes. Okay. Okay. Hi, everybody. Wonderful to be part of this to honor Connie. Most of you know that Connie and I go back, we shouldn't say how many years, but our time, my time with Democrats Abroad and the Women's Caucus started in 1992. Judy Bizot, who's unfortunately passed away and was a precious friend, she brought Bella Abzug to Connie's in 1992. And it wasn't really a meeting at Connie's house, but the house was packed. And because Judy thought that that Connie should meet Bella Abzug and the rest of us at all, and as well. And we were absolutely delighted to do it. You youngins probably don't remember, she was a legendary figure with outrageous hats, and she was really that expression bigger than life. And we were so eager to do something in this very exciting time with the election of Bill Clinton and Hillary. And we were all excited to try to do women's activities and to do them. And so what should we do? And Bella Abzug said, start a caucus. And that's what we did. So Connie, Jennifer Merchant, who I don't know if she's on the call, she's gone on to become one of France's specialists in bioethics at Paris 8, where she compares issues in the United States and in France. Meredith Gowan-LeGoff, I and others, I hope I didn't forget anybody. We were enthusiastic about Clinton and the new ideas he was putting forth regarding women. So we formed our Women's Caucus and began holding meetings. And in fact, other countries followed. Connie and I were invited to Heidelberg because they wanted to start one. And so we told them all about how we did it and how wonderful it was. It was fun and important for us. And we loved those pretzels. Our meetings in Paris were held mostly at Connie's, but also and still now at my house and at others. And as we do now, we scoured our ranks to take advantage of the terrific people in our very midst who could talk to us. And we invited women who were coming through. Connie knew and knows so many women, so many wonderful and important women, and her activism in other groups spilled over into Democrats Abroad. So we had women speaking to us from many areas and really the top experts and had incredible sessions. Then As you saw in Meredith Wheeler's magnificent film, there were all of the marches. I can't tell you how many marches and demonstrations we participated in. Connie's enthusiasm, her boundless energy, creativity, and hospitality made sign making a lot of fun in itself. I know there are lots more pictures than what we saw on just now. Braving terrible weather at Trocadero, my God, how cold we were. Marching along for the biggest women's demonstration ever, sharing excitement, ideas, and interest in the interests of the United States and women around the world. And we also worked with other groups. We also had a policy group, and we worked on convention platforms. And now we have a global women's book club that met last Sunday, and other DA groups are now organizing their own. So it's now onward and upward. And thank Connie again and again for everything that you've done so brilliantly and so enthusiastically and creatively.
Thank you so much, Sheila. That's terrific. So I have a question actually about chapters. You know, we have 12 chapters in France. You know, certainly one of the most, one of the country committees with the largest number of chapters. Paris actually now being one of the most recent. The irony being that, of course, Paris for years wasn't a chapter because in the beginning, France was Paris, which is, of course, a very French arrangement. So Reed Kennedy, you are the newest chapter chair. Would you mind responding with your sense of what is it like for you to step into these shoes and how has it been diving in?
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great. You know, it's been an interesting experience. It's like standing on the shoulder of giants. I just want to take a step back and talk about how I got involved in Democrats Abroad, which was basically a function of Trump's election. But
yeah.
I want to reiterate what Martha said about Connie being a pathway to leadership. Connie took an interest in me from an early point in my involvement with the organization. We sat and we had lunch, and she kind of gave me the lay of the land and really has been a conduit to success. I mean, she has provided guidance, connections, financial support, and of course her home to the Diversity Caucus, of which I'm a co-chair. And she's always been just so generous with everything, her time, her money, her home, her wine. So without Connie, I definitely would not have gotten involved with the organization to the extent I am involved. Whenever I need something, if I need a connection, I know that Connie most likely knows whoever I need to talk to. So she's been just an incredible resource. So thank you for that, Connie. Getting back to the chapter, you know, I've inherited an organization that already has an extended list of dedicated volunteers, established events, established venues that we can go to, at least pre-COVID. So prior to COVID, things actually moved pretty smoothly. Things have changed quite a bit since, but you know, it's really made me understand the efforts that have been put in over, you know, decades at this point to build an organization from, you know, a few dozen people to a few thousand to now over 12,000 people. It really has made me understand the effort. It's an incredible accomplishment what Connie has done, and I'm very appreciative. And I think right now, as a chapter, our focus is one thing: it's getting out the vote. And we've been able to take advantage of a lot of the national resources. So thank you, Ada, in particular in Paris, to get out the vote. But yeah, our number one goal now is to get Trump out of office, and then we can think about building the chapter more and having more events after November. So thanks again, Connie.
You're here. Jean-Pierre, we've actually got a couple of questions in the chat. Do you want to?
Sure, I could take them. I've been following the questions, and of course, Ada's been, in her usual incredible efficiency, has been handling all of these issues. But I do want to address one housekeeping issue, which, you know, one person mentioned that they wanted to donate to the site and weren't able to. So if anybody else is in that situation, I know Ada's already taken care of the person, please contact Ada, because fundraising is always important, but this year I can't stress how important fundraising is. I mean, this is really critical to democracy and to the Republic. So if anyone's having trouble, please contact Ada, and I'm sure they will find a solution if it's not working for you. But yeah, some questions came in, and this one is for you, Connie. So the question came in, are your children Democrats? And if not, what are family dinners like when you all get together? And this one is from Max.
Connie, you're muted. Sorry, go ahead.
So you have to unmute first.
Clearly, my children are all Democrats. Do I have to even tell you that? But they're not activists the way I am. I try to get my kids out on the street and stuff like that. But around the dinner table, they have so many opinions. They think Democrats don't do enough. They think Democrats aren't good. I say, well, why don't you guys get out there and participate and do stuff? I guess it's because I participated for them so much. And that's what happens when you do things, when mothers do things that the kids think they can't do because their mothers do them. And I've been very, very happy to see they have such strong, strong political feelings. Right now, they are desperate because they're so afraid that Trump is going to win the election. And I keep assuring them that it's going to be fine, and the Democratic Party has it in hand, and I think that we're improving. And Jean-Pierre, you gave us some very good statistics last night about Trump and Biden. And I don't think those were Democratic. That wasn't to make us happy, because Jean-Pierre doesn't use statistics the way Trump does. So it's I think the kids like seeing me do it, but I can't say that they jump in and participate as much as I have.
Well,
you know, I had the honor to meet your children, and even engage in some business, and they were incredibly helpful and good people, and very good at what they do.
Oh, they're wonderful. Their hearts are in the place, and nobody even resembles a Republican. As I say, they're more vehement than I am about the whole situation.
Okay.
No, thank you, Jean-Pierre. Thanks for mentioning me. Because they've lived through a lot of long years of Democrats abroad, and Sheila and Connie. And,
there's another area where Democrats Abroad France has always shown very brightly, and I think that's also due to Connie's sort of shepherding along the policy groups, right? And you know, I remember like my first meeting was Vancouver, and coming into the room and seeing Bob Brager lead a policy platform discussion with such thoughtfulness and detail, and I was amazed. And you know, come to find that in fact those roots run deep all the way back to France. So maybe Connie and Jean-Pierre, if you want to talk a little bit about kind of how, you know, what has France's approach been when it comes to policy and the party platform, which is actually a pretty incredible document.
That's a very important point to bring up, because you know that our mission, if there is such a thing, as a political party, is to get out the vote, which we will talk more about, and we've done brilliantly over the years. And this year is a really, really exceptional year. And Julia and Ada, maybe you should say something more about that in a minute. But how do you get people? How do you get people to care about a party? Most of the people who came to platform meetings or policy meetings, they were interested in policy. And maybe that's not our role exactly, precisely our defined role to talk about policy. But there are a lot of people who have issues themselves, who have personal issues that they care about, and they don't even care about the party. But we were able to combine the two and show people that the Democratic Party can have a voice for them and does have a voice for them. And I think that was absolutely essential. And then the luckiest thing, and I'll let Jean-Pierre take over, the luckiest thing that happened in our lives is that a woman by the name of Barbara Tucker moved to Paris and really gave a boost to policy because she was a genius. She was a political genius. She knew everything about policy, about legislation. She knew everything that was going on within the Democratic Party and that was going on in America. And Jean-Pierre, maybe you want to say a little bit more about it. So, because it was Jean-Pierre and Barbara Tucker who started talking policy, whether it was education, whether it was environment, whether it was gender, whether it was LGBT, whatever an issue could be, we had a place in Democrats Abroad for people who had their own special issues that they cared about. And I don't want to say too much, Jean-Pierre, because truly it was you and Barbara, but I facilitated it. I said that there was a place in Democrats Abroad, France, for policy. And well, you can take it from there.
Well, Connie, you are incredibly modest as always, because yes, you facilitated, but you did it so much more. You were the linchpin, not only to this, but to so many things. You know, I'll just give a quick follow-up to the previous question on children, because Joe pointed out that your children participated a lot with stuffing envelopes in their youth, and thousands of envelopes, and that they're still recovering from the paper cuts from that. But yeah, what can I begin to say? So I've been accused of being a Google fanboy, an Apple fanboy, but I am a much bigger Connie Board fanboy and a Barbara Tucker fanboy. I mean, literally, you have been the go-to resource for any type of event, large or small, networking resources, how to get things done. So, you know, you're quite right that, at least for me, Barbara Tucker, you know, came into Paris and it was like a whirlwind for me. And we would meet at least weekly with committees and develop policy papers. And she'd have us, you know, writing letters to senators and talking about legislation. And she had, you know, a lot of congressional contacts and other contacts. So she was keeping abreast of what was going on in Washington. So she was kind of a link between, you know, Democrats Abroad and the overseas crowd in Washington because of her contacts and leaks. And thanks to your support and the support of Democrats Abroad, we were able to bring people in and you know, make that transition from discussion to action. What can we do to influence legislation, policy? How do we get the word out? And, you know, she had that experience from her you know, campaign operative days. And so, I mean, you know, what can I say? I mean, I can't say enough in tribute to you and to Barbara. Yeah.
Is another thing is that we have an incredible source of talent. We're lucky that we live in Paris, I must say. This is not maybe true in smaller towns and smaller cities and Democrats Abroad. But we're lucky because we have the resources here in Paris to ask experts, very excellent experts, wonderful people from the American University of Paris and from universities. And
that's absolutely right. So we were very fortunate because not only did we have people that were interested and passionate, but, you know, on these committees and meetings, we had a lot of experts. So, you know, as you know, we had experts from UNESCO and from, you know, other organizations and stuff. So it was great to have that kind of talent and to be able to funnel that energy into something productive. And, you know, and even all these, you know, the fundraising events, like I was watching that film, I mean, it brought back so many memories of, you know, how many, the variety and number of events we participated and were involved in, some of which, you know, I was fortunate to be able to film and I put up on YouTube. And, you know, I participated in not necessarily Democratic Abroad events, but like fundraisers for US senators and things like that. So there's so much going on in addition, supporting the Democrats even more broadly than just, you know, what we could do under Democrats Abroad. And so, I mean, like I said, you know, you're the one to go-to resource for that. And Democrats Abroad as an organization has been so great in facilitating those possibilities. So of course there's been you, and there's been Ada, and there's been Joe and Sheila. You know, I've been to Sheila's house many times as well, and Reed, and you know, all these people working together and creating opportunities for people to get involved, to get the word out. And especially, as you know, this year in particular, I can't stress how important the election is this year. I think it's certainly the most critical election in my lifetime, and I think maybe in certainly in recent history, I would say. So it's very important for people to get out and vote, but not only to get out and vote, but to encourage everyone that you know to vote, and to the extent that you can donate, obviously, the funds are very much needed.
Thank you very much, Jean-Pierre, for reiterating that. That is greatly great.
Thank you.
And thank you also to all the people who are on the call, who I know have participated so much in Policy Beats and have come to speak for us and have shared their information and knowledge. People like Dana Powers and Jim Christensen.
You know, I'm glad you said that, because that is one thing I left out, which is so important. So the offshoot of all those activities, there were spin-offs. And so we have, you know, the energy policy, environment policy, and all these great things that Dana has done and Jim has done. And, you know, even Ada and Jim and I had worked on some, the very beginning of, you know, policy planks and formation, which, you know, Jim has done a phenomenal job with, as has Dana and many others. And just encouraging those activities
Sally
is great.
Schwartz deserves a shout out.
Sally Schwartz, of
Absolutely.
course.
You know,
Absolutely. So many people. So
yeah.
if I leave any names out, it's not because, you know, it's not because I don't recognize your merits. Just, you know, the list would be very long, but it's just to give examples of so many great things. And I'll tell you, I'm the director of the Political Forum. And one of the things that I was so happy last night is I heard from one of the youngest members, because I think it's really important to get that younger generation involved. And I know Peter's been involved in a lot of volunteer activities, and he's doing great stuff. And he mentioned last night to me how much he appreciates the Political Forum, because he said, you know, he goes to all these Democratic events and stuff, and they're great, you know, he says, but they're very technical sometimes, and, you know, they're very focused. And he said what he liked about the forum was he saw this as an area where Democrats can just get together as Democrats, and they can have more general discussions, and that there's just things that happen synergistically. And the more we communicate and get people involved in their passions, you know, the more hopefully we can accomplish in the future.
Folks, if you are not sure what Political Forum is, Political Forum is a long-running event that has been taking place in Paris, and since COVID, we have taken it online. So it is possible to participate in Political Forum. Jean-Pierre is the host, and we do it once a month, and you can do it participate via Zoom. So look for that in the France events calendar. You can participate from anywhere. And oh, I see we have Heather from Tel Aviv coming in, who's the chair of Israel, and she's saying, congratulations, Connie. And that actually reminds me, I should make sure that other folks maybe around the region also have access to Political Forum. Maybe that can be a nice space for others to participate in. I know we have some folks in the UK who also drop by.
And Ada, can I just mention to you, there's 2 more questions that pops into the chat in case you want to take them later,
No, you
or
can
have time to.
Yeah, you know, you can do them if you like. Go ahead.
Okay, so one question, again, well, let's take the question first from Wendy, because she hasn't had a chance yet to ask. So Wendy Johnson says, what chance do we have to block Trump passing through a Supreme Court judge of his choosing? So I don't know who wants to address that, but it's a good question.
It's thin. I think it's a thin, it's difficult. I think it's very difficult.
I think Joe should answer that.
Yeah.
Oh, Bob. Yeah.
Joe or Doug.
By the way, we do have Jamie Raskin coming, who's probably the best person, and he's the one who's going to answer that question.
Yes, absolutely. We've got a couple of questions in the chat that are good Jamie class.
Yeah, there's
interrupt.
one specifically addressed to Jamie. Yeah.
Mhm.
So Joe said
Okay.
to save that question for Jamie. And then the last question is from Max. And he says, it's discouraging living in Massachusetts, yet being told the election hinges on Michigan. Then how does my Massachusetts vote help? I think we can't ignore that question.
I can say a word about that. Everyone in New York, people sometimes say the same thing. And one thing that I've done, because I've been spending the last few months in upstate New York in a swing district, is phone banking and volunteering for local candidates where the outcome for New York State may be clear, but the outcome for local candidates in areas where Republicans and Massachusetts may not have any such areas, but most states do, is to really go out and push turnout for those local candidates. Because once you get the person to go out and vote for the local state senate or congressional candidate, they'll vote for Biden as well. But you tell people, the presidency, we're a blue state. There's no, what's the difference? You know, even my 96-year-old father, who never missed an election, told me, I'm not voting this year. I said, what do you mean you're not voting? So I got him an absentee ballot. You know, I think that can be a good motivation, is to focus on some of the local races that are hotly contested.
Thank you so much, Doug. I would like to mention that Representative Raskin has now joined the call. Thank you so much, Jamie. Over to Joe to introduce our esteemed friend and colleague of France. Joe, are you there?
I'm here, and I was just putting a quote from the honorable representative from the 8th District of Maryland in the chat box. It is a great honor to welcome my good friend Jamie Raskin, even though it says Josie, no, he changed it because it said his scheduler before, now it has his name, to speak here. Jamie is a champion of Democrats abroad on the Hill, and has been a dear friend to us and to Connie and me and some others. I'll give you a little bit of his background, just to embarrass him, because I see he needs, because in fact he didn't make summa cum laude at Harvard in 1983. He was only magna cum laude. He went on to go to Harvard Law School, where he again didn't make summa, which is magna cum laude, but he was an editor of the Harvard Law Review. After then, he became a professor of constitutional law at the American University College of Law, where he in fact teaches constitutional law, and is an extraordinary, very important scholar of constitutional law. We met Jamie here in 2003 and 2004 when he was on a sabbatical with his family, and he very quickly became very active in Democrats Abroad, and to the point actually that he was elected to be a delegate for Democrats Abroad to the 2004 National Convention, and he was meant to return to Washington in August, and we persuaded him to stay on legally a couple extra days to make sure that as a representative he could represent Democrats abroad at the National Convention, because he was still legally abroad. And then I think he officially left France a few days after that, but that was an important thing, and we thank him for that. Shortly after returning to the States, Jamie decided that he was going to run for the state Senate in Maryland. He took on an incumbent Republican in the district who had been, I don't know how many years, at least 20 years in the, I should actually put myself, start the video, take myself off put myself in the video. Jamie took on this Republican candidate who'd been there for a number of years, and I forgot exactly how many, but where he famously said to her in a debate, "Senator, when you took your oath of office, you placed your hand on the Bible and swore to uphold the Constitution. You did not place your hand on the Constitution and swear to uphold the Bible. One of his many very famous quotes. And so he served in the Maryland Senate until he decided to run for the House seat that was being vacated by Senator then Representative future Senator Chris Van Hollen, also a very good friend and the desk mate of my college roommate in the House of Delegates in Maryland. He ran in 2015 for the 2016 election, and in that race, you have the language that I just put up there. He said his ambition, or my ambition, is not to be in the political center, it is to be in the moral center. And I think that summarizes for me exactly who Jamie Raskin is. He is currently the senior whip for the House Democratic Caucus. He is the vice chair of the Congressional Progressives Caucus. He's on the caucus for the Democrat LGBT Caucus. He is the chair of the House Subcommittee on Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, and I'm very confident that he's doing an extraordinary job given his constitutional law skills. Several of my friends have taken his class, and they told me that they wish they'd committed to Harry Carey beforehand because it was so difficult. But he taught them a number of wonderful things. He's on the Judiciary Committee, and he'll be talking. That's why I wanted him to answer the question about the current Supreme Court issue. He's also on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, which was chaired for a while by our dear friend Carolyn Maloney of New York, and he's also on the committee and I think this is actually terribly important, he's on the Select Committee on the Coronavirus Crisis. Jamie spoke brilliantly a few nights ago to another event of Democrats Abroad, and we're sure that he'll do even a better job this time. And with that, I'm happy to give the floor over to my dear friend Jamie Raskin.
Joe, thank you so much, one, for inviting me, and two, for that beautiful, protracted, intimate introduction, which makes me sound very old indeed. And I suppose I'm on my way to being old. I'm thrilled to be back with my friends and Democrats Abroad. I think it was just either last night or the night before, but they're all blending in, that I was with DA Italy, and I think they opened that up to the whole world. Joe, please just correct me so I understand exactly what I'm doing. We're honoring Connie Board here, right? And then talking about the national situation, is that correct?
We are honoring Connie Board, and
Okay.
then we are talking about the national situation. And
All
I
right,
can
good.
think of no one better to do both of those things.
All right. Well, look, when you were going through, my whole sordid biography, I thought about this story that I used to tell about my wife Sarah, because Sarah never comes anywhere with me to do stuff. But I wrote this book called We the Students, and the Supreme Court had me come down to talk. They invited me to talk to the justices and the clerks about We the Students, which is a book about all the Supreme Court cases affecting kids in public schools. It's like locker searches and drug testing and censorship of newspapers and yearbooks and segregation and desegregation, all that stuff. But anyway, they said, come on down and give us all of your wisdom about the Supreme Court and public schools. And so I said to Sarah, you got to come with me, because they invited me to give all my wisdom about public schools. So she said, all right, I'll come down. And she came down, and I went up, I got up, and I gave my whole speech, and I retired to what I thought was, more than polite applause. And I turned to her and I said, so, how was that? How did you think I did? And she said, well, I don't know how much wiser they are, but they're definitely older. So I was thinking about that when you were going through that long resume. So, hey, look, first about Connie Board, who introduced me to Democrats Abroad France and Democrats Abroad all over the world. God, my God, this is back in 2003. And it always cracks me up, because usually when you go to meet party bosses anywhere else in America, well, at least in the old days, you were meeting some old guy with, smoking a cigar and in a back room someplace. But here you have Connie Board basically assembled with all of these brilliant intellectuals and novelists and playwrights and hippie expatriates. And it's just kind of a salon scene. It was just wild. And I couldn't believe that was like the Democratic Party of France. And sure enough, you've got the most forward-thinking, progressive, enlightened people in the world, Americans who are all over the world, either in business or in the military or in academic life or studying or whatever, but they love their country so much. They love the idea of America. They love their experience of America. They love their families. They love the land. They love the real America so much that they're willing to fight for it from all over the world. And, in other state parties, there's some patronage to give away. People get this job or they get that job. And if there's a governor, you can make somebody the Secretary of Transportation or whatever. And, there's pork. There's no pork with Democrats abroad. It's all driven by idealism and love of country. So I say that except for my native Maryland, the greatest state party in the world is Democrats abroad. And I'm so proud of everything that the Democrats abroad do. And Connie, you are a magnificent visionary organizer. You are somebody who reaches out to bring people in. You have an inclusionary, egalitarian, democratic perspective on this. And it's just really wonderful to be able to count myself among your friends. I once read this passage from Ignacio Salone, who said that the most important choice in politics is your choice of friends. So I'm very happy to be friends with you and with Joe Smallhoover and all of the great Democrats abroad who bring in certainly hundreds of thousands, if not millions of votes in our elections and keep democracy alive and keep America popular at a time when we have such dreadful role models like that corrupt buffoon, Putin's puppet in the White House today. And wherever you are, whether you're in Tanzania or you're in Switzerland or El Salvador or Nigeria, wherever you are showing the world a different face of America, a different aspect of what our country is. So I want to thank you all for doing that. When I was living over in France, I spent a couple weeks at one point retracing the steps of Thomas Jefferson, and I met a lot of the Jefferson scholars over there. And one of them told me that Jefferson, when he used to make a toast in France, he would say that every person on earth who loves freedom has two countries, his or her own, and France. And I just want to say that every Democrat in America who loves democracy and is passionate about America has two parties, his or her own state party and Democrats abroad because of what you guys are doing. And Connie and Joe, you have been the stalwarts of Democrats abroad for a long time. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Could you tell us a little bit about the buffoon?
I'm going to tell you about the buffoon. Let's see. There's very little that can be done about the Supreme Court. What we need to do on the Supreme Court, which is much on people's mind this week, is to focus America on the fact that they are stealing this Supreme Court seat in order to dismantle the Affordable Care Act. They are trying to deprive millions and millions of people of their health insurance policies, of pre-existing condition coverage, of coverage for the young people with their families, and of the Medicaid expansion, which got millions of people health care. And we're just quoting them. Donald Trump said this was his most important priority, along with building the wall and having Mexico pay for it. This is what they voted dozens of times. And so by installing whichever right-wing Federalist Society hack they're going to try to put in the shoes of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, they are just trying to destroy the Affordable Care Act. They're trying to eviscerate reproductive freedom, the abortion rights that women have with their doctors and their families. They're trying to destroy contraceptive rights in the Affordable Care Act and in private health insurance plans. They've made that perfectly clear. So this has got to be a referendum on health care at a time when we have now lost more than 200,000 people, more than 7 million, because of the lethal indifference and incompetence of the Trump administration. We lead the world in COVID-19 case count. We lead the world in COVID-19 death count. We're 5% of the world's population. We're more than 25% of the world's cases, and it is galloping out of control everywhere. And the president and his closest COVID-19 advisors are now talking openly about herd immunity, which Trump also sometimes misspeaks and describes in a very telling Freudian slip, herd mentality. So sometimes they'll say, well, we believe in herd immunity. Other times says, we believe in herd mentality. Of course, they believe in both of them. They believe in a herd mentality to get everyone to accept herd immunity. Understand what herd immunity is. Herd immunity is letting the disease wash over the population and not doing anything to stop it. And we've lost 200,000 people with 7 million cases. So you do the math. If we get to 70 million cases, we're going to lose 2 million people, right? This is a policy of mass human sacrifice. The party that campaigned against so-called death panels in the Affordable Care Act to prevent the expansion of health insurance in America has become a death panel. They are literally administering death as part of their policy of mass transmission of the disease and herd immunity. So this is where we are. And we are battling to defend the election because this is our hope, a massive landslide repudiation of right-wing authoritarianism and a victory for Biden-Harris in 41 days. Meantime, the president and also legislators in Pennsylvania are now openly talking about the election being settled in the House. Well, what are they talking about here? And everybody, my friends and Democrats abroad, you need to know about what they're doing here. There's always a method in the madness. The president has been going around the country lambasting the post office. He called it a joke. They've got this right-wing Republican billionaire, Louis DeJoy, in there, who was disassembling the mail sorting machinery and carting off the blue collection boxes, right? Okay, so they're attacking the post office. They're describing mail-in balloting as a fraud. Meantime, in the state legislatures, they're doing everything they can to block the counting of ballots before Election Day. Why? They want the ballots to arrive on Election Day because they think they're going to be winning there, because it is the Democrats who are more concerned about COVID-19 and are mailing in, whereas they're telling their people, laissez les bon temps rouler, and just go out, don't worry about the masks and don't worry about social distancing, and just go and vote. So they're hopeful that that's the one place they might be winning on Election Day voting. Then the president decrees that's the real election. The millions and millions of people who have voted absentee, like him and like Bill Barr, that's nonsense. The millions and millions of people who voted direct mail, that's nonsense. And they're going to try to litigate to stop it all. But here's the real plan, Connie, and you need to tell this to people. They're going to create so much chaos and confusion that they will give an alibi to Republican-controlled legislatures in particularly 3 states that we expect to win handsomely in the popular vote. And we're going to swamp them in the popular vote. There is no doubt about that. And it's getting bigger every day. We're going to beat them in Wisconsin, but they got a Republican legislature. We're going to beat them big time in Pennsylvania, but they got a Republican legislature. We're going to beat them big time in North Carolina, we think, but they've got a Republican legislature. So what will those GOP-controlled state House and state Senate leaders do? And they're already talking about it, and Trump is already saying this is going to be settled in the House. They're going to say, too much chaos, too much confusion, all of these ballots coming in late and so on. President says he won and so on. We are going to exercise our powers under Article 2 of the Constitution, our plenary power over the Constitution, to supplant the Secretary of State and say, no, that's no longer the law. Don't appoint electors for the winner in our state. Instead, we want you, either if they're really brazen, they'll say appoint electors for Trump, but more likely they're going to say don't appoint any electors at all. It's just too confusing. We don't know. Thereby, they deprive Joe Biden and Kamala Harris of a majority in the Electoral College. Well, what happens if nobody gets to 270 in the Electoral College? According to the 12th Amendment of the Constitution, it is kicked into the US House of Representatives for a so-called contingent election. Now, you say, well, why would they want to do that? We've got a 235 to 200 margin in the House, and we're likely to enlarge that margin. The Democrats are in control. Why? Under the 12th Amendment, we don't vote one member, one vote. We vote one state, one vote. So California gets one vote, Montana gets one vote, New York gets one vote, Idaho gets one vote. You get the picture. Today, the Republicans control 26 state delegations in the US House of Representatives. We control 22 delegations, and 2 are tied. Okay, 2 of them are tied, Pennsylvania and Michigan. So there's a shadow election going on. There's not just the popular vote election, which is for symbolic and moral bragging rights. And there's not just the conventional electoral college election for 270. There is a fight over who is going to have a majority of state delegations in the US House of Representatives. If you guys are on my email list, you will be getting a long letter from me about this, explaining it in even more detail, unfortunately, than I just explained it now, but about the states that we need to be focused on in order to, because either they're a tie, like Pennsylvania is 9-9, and so we've got to win this De Pasquale seat in Pennsylvania, so we have 10-8, so Pennsylvania is 1 vote in the Biden column rather than a no vote, because if it's a tie, no vote will be cast in that election. But we also have to defend a number of states, like we got to defend Iowa, where right now we're up, but the Republicans are spending tens of millions of dollars to try to take down, Abby Finkenauer and Cindy Axne and so on. And then also, there are other states we've got to try to win outright, like Montana and Alaska, which have 1 at-large representative, but we've got 2 very strong people running. And by winning those elections, just by winning 1 election, you take the entire state, because there's just 1 rep. So I'm sorry to pile more work on you guys, but it's not just about getting to 270 in the Electoral College. We've got to get to 26 in the US House of Representatives, because if this ends up in the Supreme Court, even if they don't fill Ginsburg's seat, which they will, we're going to lose in the Supreme Court. We saw that in Bush versus Gore. These people are bare-knuckled partisans. They are in the process of turning the Supreme Court into an adjunct of the Republican National Committee and the Federalist Society. So that's my answer to you, Connie. I wish I could say something more hopeful. And can I ask you one question? In what sense are you retiring? What does that mean? You're not going anywhere, are you? Okay. You got to unmute so I can hear you.
Go ahead and unmute, Connie. You're muted. We can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere, Jamie. Ada knows that. She's ready for me. She'll put me to work. Jamie, that was brilliant and enlightening and frightening. We've got to get those Democrats abroad votes. I'm just devastated. You'd have to almost be a law professor to understand that as a voter.
So the last time this happened was in 1800. You remember the famous presidential election between Jefferson and Adams, which Jefferson beat Adams, but because they were doing the electors in a weird way with the president and the vice president, it ended up a tie between Jefferson and Burr. And Burr, being the sneaky rapscallion he was, decided to try to contest it in the House, and it was 33 ballots before finally the Federalists, who hated Jefferson, decided that they would go with Jefferson over Burr. But that's the last time we've seen this. So we've got to educate people about the 12th Amendment. Obviously, and we were talking about this back when I was, one of your foot soldiers, Connie, we got to get rid of the stupid Electoral College. There are so many opportunities for Republican strategic mischief. And I've been whining about this since back then. And I did, the very first bill I introduced in the Maryland State Senate was the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. And we're more than halfway there now. We've got 16 states in the District of Columbia who've signed on to it, but it's not going to be ready in time for 6 weeks from now, obviously. So,
Jamie,
so there we are.
Joe here, let me interrupt. There is a ballot initiative in Colorado exactly on your compact. Do you have any clue as to where that stands?
Well, I don't have any specific polling information out of Colorado, but anytime we've polled national popular vote, it polls 70 to 80%. Everybody thinks we should elect the president the way we elect governors, U.S. senators, mayors, everybody else. Whoever gets the most votes wins. I mean, a lot of you guys know, we spend tens of millions of dollars a year exporting American democracy to foreign countries. The one thing we never even try to export is the Electoral College. Nobody has ever adopted that from us. And if you were creating the system today, nobody would say, oh yes, let's set up the system where the loser can beat the winner in 2 of the last 5 elections in 2000 and 2016, electing manifestly unqualified people in both cases, and where the whole presidential election comes down to 7 or 8 states before it even begins. And the vast majority of Americans live in safe red states or blue states. And it's only that handful of states where you have some rough approximation of equality between Republicans and Democrats, where all of the presidential visits and campaigning takes place, all the TV ads and all the offices and so on, and everybody else is a bystander.
Jamie, we've got a few questions if you have a minute. The first question I'd like to ask, however, is how do we get on your email list? There's a lot of people who would be very interested in that information.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so you can go to my website, which is www.jamieraskin.com, and you can just sign up there. You can send me an email if you want to, which is just jbr@jamieraskin.com. If you've got something personal and you want to say, jbr@jamieraskin.com. And I think some people have put up the link. So yes, you sign up for my list, you will never be lonely again. I guarantee you. And I am about to send out a whole explanation of the 12th Amendment thing, because I've started talking about it. I'm no longer, for 5 or 6 weeks now, I've not wanted to talk about it because I've been pretty sure that's what they're doing, but not positive, and I don't want people blaming me for it. But now the Republicans are letting it leak out, and Trump, in his inimitable fashion, has already spoken about it, saying it might just all end up in the House. Pelosi heard him say that, and she told me so.
We have a couple of questions. I'm going to take them in the order in which they were submitted. One from Joel Luboff. Whether or not Roe v. Wade is upheld, what kind of laws would you propose to guarantee a woman's right to choose?
Well, we can codify Roe versus Wade. In other words, we could codify Planned Parenthood versus Casey, which is a somewhat weaker standard, right? Which says there shall be no undue burden placed on the rights of a woman to pursue an abortion pre-viability. Or we can go back to the trimester framework that was set forth by Justice Blackmun in Roe versus Wade and codified. That's what we did in Maryland. We put it into state law. Now, that's not to say that that's any kind of necessarily secure strategy, because the Republicans will undoubtedly argue that that's unconstitutional. Right? If we pass that at the federal level, they would say this is a violation of states' rights, which of course they don't care about anymore. They've been trampling states' rights about every day since I've been in Congress. Just think about their position on marijuana,
What chance, this is from Wendy Johnson, what chance do we have to block Trump pushing through a Supreme Court judge of his choosing?
Not much. Not much. One of the things that we were talking about was if we engage in a set of House impeachments, if we impeach the president again, if we impeach Bill Barr, if we really tallied up the high crimes and misdemeanors, it would tie them up, because under Senate rules, they would have to conduct a trial. But the problem with that is they control the Senate rules by majority vote. So they could just rewrite the rules at that point. And so I think that we've thought the better of that strategy, as much as all of them deserve to be impeached. But There's not a lot that can be done on this, but I know that is just demoralizing as hell to people to go from Justice Ginsburg to some right-wing, anti-environment, anti-reproductive freedom, anti-labor, anti-Bill of Rights, Federalist Society nutcase, and I don't know who we're going to get, but we're going to get somebody. It's very demoralizing. But what I want everybody to remember is that the Supreme Court has been a profoundly reactionary institution from the beginning of the Republic. If you go back and read that book I wrote after Bush versus Gore, which is called Overruling Democracy, the Supreme Court versus the American People, I made that point that for the vast majority of American history, the Supreme Court has been a right-wing brake on social progress. Think about the whole period between the founding and the Civil War. The Supreme Court did nothing for enslaved African Americans, nothing. On the contrary, they adopted Dred Scott, which said that African Americans have no rights the white man is bound to respect. The Constitution, declared Justice Taney, is a white man's compact, right? 300 pages of white supremacist propaganda. Then even after the Civil War, after this massive human sacrifice to make change for government of the people, by the people, for the people, after the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, still the Supreme Court in 1896 proclaims the doctrine of separate but equal in Plessy versus Ferguson, unleashing another 70 years of Jim Crow apartheid and lynching and violence against the African American community. So you've got a few decade period in there of the Warren Court where you get decisions that have given the Supreme Court its little halo, Brown versus Board, Gideon versus Wainwright, Roe versus Wade, Smith versus Allwright, the white primary line of cases. But that lasts for a few decades. And then immediately you get into the Burger Court and the Rehnquist Court and the Roberts Court, and the Supreme Court goes right back to the original baseline of white supremacy and defense of concentrated wealth and property and power against the people. So it's a terrible thing we're living through, but it is exactly the Supreme Court returning to its roots. So where do we get change from in America? Through social movements. And we are the party of the civil rights movement and the women's movement and the LGBTQ movement and the labor movement and the human rights movement and the environmental movement. Put your stock in the civilizing movements of our time. Let's make the Democratic Party as progressive as those movements are, and we will be able to wage battle against the corruption and the incompetence of the Republican Party and win everywhere in the country.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Thank you very much. We have a question.
Okay, you guys, forgive me. I've got to go vote, and I'm not just voting for myself. I've got proxies. I love you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jamie. Well, that was bracing. Okay. Well, we have our work to do. And I think that what that means is, as actually our efforts as Democrats abroad to mobilize the overseas vote and to also protect that vote are as critical now as they've ever been. I think I would like now for Julia Bryan, our global chair, to comment about how we are taking on those challenges as DA, and maybe also Bob Vallier, if you'd like to speak on how we've been using technology. Julia and Bob, would you like to say a few words now?
Well, absolutely, Ada. And, it was really interesting to hear what Jamie had to say about the different states, and particularly, his list of Pennsylvania, Iowa, Montana, and Alaska. Luckily, Pennsylvania has that really small margin that we can make up. We have a lot of Pennsylvania voters, but it also drives home the point that voter protection is incredibly important, because in Pennsylvania has these challenges there. They geo-block a lot of Americans abroad from downloading their ballots. This is an issue we've been working on for several years, actually. And we are, we deal with the DNC. We work with the voter protection team there. We work with the DNC, the voter protection team in Pennsylvania. We do a lot of media outreach, and we work with voters, giving them the information they need to successfully download their ballots. A lot of voter protection work is information work. It's information work, passing that information to voters, passing that information to local election offices, and then making sure everyone in between knows about it, and we can really escalate that information through media outreach, et cetera. The media love to talk about this. We have really good connections this year with journalists. We know who's interested in what subject. We have our USPS reporters on call. We have our certain state reporters on call. And it's been really useful for getting stories out there. And that really helps us spread our message. Just a few specific things that we're also doing, using the power of lawyers. Lawyers are very valuable in this election. I'm sure everyone, as Jamie mentioned, I think the lawyers are on our side, and they've been so valuable. I've had the privilege to work on, I'm on my second case right now that I'm working on. The first one was suing Postmaster DeJoy. I'm very pleased to say that was a very successful case. And there are several injunctions now in place on the postmaster, requiring him to allow overtime. And throughout the election, I think this is a really important thing. I think it was a victory not only for Americans abroad, but also for every American voter who wants to get in their ballot. And so it was frankly a big thrill to be able to participate. Everything was online. We were talking on the phone and having to spell, my name got spelled wrong because the court reporter's Wi-Fi was a little bit spotty, and that's the times we are living in, but that's the reality, and we just have to do what we need to do. And I'm currently working on another case as well, trying to make sure ballots can get transmitted safely back through embassies and also the USPS. So again, there are so many different cases out there where we are fighting for overseas voter rights, for vote by mail voters in the United States. It's incredibly important. And I'm really just hats off to so many of the lawyers who are fighting this very good fight. And also hats off to voters, because there are so many, we have over 8,000 jurisdictions, 8,000 local election offices in the United States. And it sometimes feels like we're trying to call every one of them, but we don't have that ability. So what we're doing is we're deputizing our voters. We're giving them the information. The first line of contact is through our voters. We give them the information. We say, go back to your local election office, tell them this, and then if they don't concede, come back to us. And this way we are able to really expand our efforts. Hats off to Maya Buchanan for her work as voter protection director for Democrats Abroad. She's been amazing at this, and our wonderful, she's worked hand in hand with our GOTV team and with our Vote From Abroad comms team and our global comms team. It's a united effort to make sure voters have the information they need to be able to not only vote, but talk to their local election offices and talk to their friends and get them to help vote.
Yeah, it's so important to protect the vote. And, for those who may not understand the context of the case that Julia was talking about, it was just in the news, but there was some citizens plaintiffs who sued Trump and Postmaster General DeJoy, and they won. And this is now the postmaster has to treat election mail as first-class mail, has to pay overtime, all the overtime since October, and it has to have a plan for how they're going to pay it going forward. And part of that case was Julia Bryan, our global chair, testifying about the undue hardship it was putting on overseas voters. So the voter protection work that we do is to fight for our rights. Our voting rights is really, really important. I know Joe also was very active in 2018 in the midterm elections. We did a lot of voter protection work following up on election irregularities for overseas voters in Arizona. Joe, I don't know if you'd like to say a word about some of that work.
Well, I hope that we don't have to deal with this again, but I'm sure that we will. We have, every one of the states has a voter protection committee. There is also a National Association of Lawyers who are ready to jump into the breach if there's a problem. In 2018, for instance, the county, and I forgot the name of the county, but the county where Savannah is located, decided that they were not going to count overseas ballots. And we got two notices from two voters that was happening, and within an hour we had the state. I had the state of Georgia's voter protection team on the case, and I think before the end of the day, the county had switched its point of view, and they were now counting overseas votes. Something similar happened in Arizona, and the point of that is, as soon as a voter knows that there's a problem, so you should always be tracking your vote if you can. As soon as we learn of a problem, the team. I have deputy counsels in all three regions of Democrats Abroad, and a connection with all of those voter protection folks. And as soon as we learn of a problem, either with ballots not being sent out, or ballots not being counted when they arrive, we can react very quickly. We're not going to bring that lawsuit, but we can get the local folks into action, and they will. There was something happened earlier today. I didn't have a chance actually even to figure out what it was. North Carolina is changing its ballot after they've already been sent out, and I need to look into that, because that could be a real problem for folks overseas who are getting, if they're getting a ballot by mail. It could be something we want to look at to make sure that they're not being disenfranchised. But we are ready to answer all of those questions. But the key is going to be, we can't be everywhere, but our voters, our members, our teams. We have 15, how many, Julia? 15,000 volunteers worldwide?
16,000 right now.
16,000. Our volunteers and our members need to tell us quickly so that we can react quickly, and we will.
That's, thank you very much, Joe. So at the end of the day, folks, it is a human endeavor. What we do as Democrats abroad, as Democrats, as American citizens, is a human endeavor. And it's just people. When people show up, we are the ones who decide. If we don't vote, we don't show up, other people get to decide. This is a really important thing, and I think one of the resounding lessons over the years of the story of Connie and what has been wrought in Democrats Abroad France is the answer to the question is what can we do in dark times and hopeless times? What can we do? We can organize, and I think that's an important thing. Bob, did you want to add something regarding technology? And also, I wanted to point out that Adrienne George did join us on the call, and I think she'd like to also have a word, to say a word to Connie.
Well, you asked me to say something about tech, so if you want me to say that, I will. In the not so distant past, we had to go door to door to knock on people's heads to get them to vote. We had to use pen and paper to help register to vote. We had to submit things through the postal system. But now we live in the 21st century, and it's like living in the Jetsons, or Star Trek. We do everything online through technology. And in the last 4 to 6 years, Democrats Abroad has been leading the way in the Democratic Party in the use of these kinds of technologies. I mean, first of all, we're a global organization, right? And so when we meet, whether it's the regional meeting or the global meeting, we meet online and we connect through platforms like Zoom or WebEx, so that we're all in the same place at the same time, even if we're in different places in different time zones, virtually connected in order to conduct business. We also have, for the last decade now, and recently revamped this website, votefromabroad.org, which allows everyone to request their absentee ballot and even to register to vote if you're a first-time voter. And in most cases, you're able to submit that request directly via email. And to receive your ballot by email. I hope everyone has gotten theirs, because the day to receive them was September 19th. I got mine, and I didn't even have to look in spam to do it. And we're reaching out to our membership and beyond our membership by using technology as well. Already the fact that we can email some 200,000 members with just a few clicks is an enormous advance. You know, not that long ago, it would have been licking 200,000 stamps, right? And that would have been not so much fun. But we also, when we phone bank, we don't do it the old-fashioned way anymore with people dialing on their phones. People don't really dial anymore anyway. That's a 20th century verb. We do it on CallHub through our computers in a fully automated way with just a couple of clicks, which allows us to reach everybody in our database. But outside of our database, that's the real challenge. And so how do we get to them? We use social media and other internet technologies to reach out to them. And so we're currently running some rather large-scale advertising campaigns on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and other platforms as well. But we're also running digital native ads on a wide range of some 6 different websites. So if you were to go look up some story on slate.com tonight, there's a very reasonable chance that you would see an ad for Vote From Abroad, because that website knows where you're calling from, where you're looking at the website from. It knows that you're not in the US. It knows that you're, and most of you tonight are in France. And so it would place an ad in front of your eyes. So all of these different technologies are allowing us to reach our members and beyond our members. And you know what? It's working. It's working, because just the other day, Vote From Abroad passed the 500,000 mark. More than 500,000 unique users have visited Vote From Abroad since the beginning of this calendar year. And at the same time, 4 years ago, just 4 years ago, only 187,000 had visited. That's more than double the number of people. And that's a very, very encouraging sign as well. And you know what? Of those 500,000 people in the last 2 or 3 weeks, just the month of September. In the month of September, 92% of the people visiting Vote From Abroad are visiting it because of ads, social media ads. They're clicking on those ads and they're following through. And of that 92%, I know there's a lot of math involved. I was told there would be no math, but guess what? There's math. Of those 92%, 2/3 of them, 2/3 are not members. They are not in our database. We would not be able to contact them with an email or with a phone call. Those are people who are coming to Vote From Abroad and requesting their absentee ballot remotely because of technology. So this is a huge boon for us. And we all believe that we're going to achieve record turnout from abroad this year. So that's really exciting, and that's the 21st century. And maybe if all state parties could take a few pages from Democrats Abroad in the way that we use and deploy technology, we'd have a massive blue wave. But Ada, if you would indulge me for just a minute, I was happy to talk about technology, but really the main reason I came here was to talk about Connie. So if you would indulge me for just a minute or two, I'd like to say a few words about Constance Board, who's sitting there in her den at her computer, which I have fixed so many times for her. There have been 2 people who have been very influential in my role in the Democratic Party. One was my high school counselor, who in 1984, I shouldn't have said that out loud, took me to see Walter Mondale at Flint Northern High School. He was making a campaign stop, and the next candidate, the next Democratic candidate who made a campaign stop in Flint was Bernie Sanders in 2016, followed by Hillary Clinton. So that was a kind of an inspirational moment for me, and I got active as a result of that, and I was active in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different forms, not always with the party. But when I moved to Paris the second time, within about a week of me arriving, I got an email because I had signed up on Democrats Abroad, an email signed by Sheila Malovany Chevalier. Said, oh, anybody who wants to run for office should put their candidacy forward soon. I thought, well, what the hell? I got a big fat grant right now to write a book, so I got time. Why not? So I put my name forward for a member at large, and I went to some a mixer at John Morris's house, and some very animated blonde woman, nervously smoking, ran up to me and said, "Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Are you Bob? I have been trying to get in contact with you." And that woman, of course, was Connie Board, who then, over the next hour and a half, filled me in on all of the details of Democrats Abroad France. And there were, at the time, a lot of details. And sussed me out and quickly realized that I could form a coherent thought using complete sentences, and so said, you need to stay in this race. And I did, and I lost. I did not win my election that night, but there was no candidate for treasurer. And so Connie told Marge Bernstein, Marge, why don't you be treasurer? And then she said, Bob, you lost, but why don't you be a member at large anyway? And, that was her mistake because she got stuck with me then. And so did Democrats Abroad. So I started in on Democrats Abroad at that time because of Connie's insistence. And I didn't really know what I was getting into. I didn't know I was going to be getting 60 emails a day, and that Connie was going to be texting me to tell me that she sent an email and then calling me to tell me that she sent a text. And I didn't know that I was going to be spending as much time at her house as I spent at my house. And telling her how to fix her email program and insert images here. But over the next couple of years, we oversaw the transition from the old database to the new database. We cleaned up the database. We organized AGMs. We went to London together for an AGM for the Democrats Abroad. That was quite a weekend. And I mostly watched. I watched Connie work. If you pay careful attention to her, you'll discover that she has a lot of Jedi mind tricks that she likes to play on people. Well, maybe not likes to, but does anyway, in order to accomplish larger goals. So she knows how to read people. She knows how to sit back and watch what's happening. And she knows when to sort of insert herself and say, okay, now we move, right? When she decides it's time to move, she gets the job done. And brings everybody along with her. One quote that's attributed to Ruth Bader Ginsburg recently is, I don't remember exactly how it goes, so I'll paraphrase it, but there's an art to getting things done. You got to fight for what you believe in, but you got to do it in a way that brings everybody along with you. And that's something that Connie does. And fight she does do indeed. She's half Italian, I'm half Italian. I'm worse, I'm half Sicilian. And so sometimes fight we actually did. More than once, we had some screaming matches on the phone. And the next day, it was as if nothing happened because that's just how Italians are. Now I live in Italy and I understand that to be absolutely true. And so I watched and I learned, and now I'm here in Italy and I'm applying all of the Connie lessons here in DA Italy. And we're getting things done here too. Just last week, we organized a big, huge, fat fundraiser that brought in about $15,000. And the reason I was able to work successfully with some of those groups who were sometimes difficult is because I sat back and I watched and I waited and I played the Jedi mind tricks that I learned from Connie, and eventually I got everybody to go along. And as a result of that, we cashed in. And so I owe a lot of that, in fact, to Connie. I owe a lot to Connie, more than I can express in this somewhat nervous and rambling discourse that I'm inventing on the spot of it, on the spot in the space of a minute or so. And I think we all do in Democrats Abroad France and Democrats Abroad in general. For a long time, she supported the organization spiritually, psychologically, emotionally, existentially, financially, and in so many other adverbs that they're hard to enumerate. She's brought people around from Kirsten Gillibrand and Howard Dean to Tim Kaine, and I forget who else I've met in her apartment over the years. And had the pleasure to be able to talk about Kierkegaard with, or show off my guacamole, a recipe which, by the way, she still doesn't have, and she's never going to get, so sorry, Connie. That's my secret recipe. All your recipes are published in your first book, because, you know, not only is she a Democrat abroad, she's also an author. Her and Sheila wrote a best-selling collection of recipes, How Did Toro Moi Cookery Book, of American recipes. That was a bestseller in France. And she also, along with Sheila, translated Simone de Beauvoir's Second Sex, which is hugely important. And actually, that's how I first knew her name, because by training, I'm a philosophy professor. Who knew? But she did this all while raising 6 kids, maybe 7, if you include Democrats Abroad France in her brood. And I think you probably should, because all of us are her children in many ways, and all of us have learned a lot of lessons from her. The reason that I have the disco here in the background, by the way, is because one of the first stories she told me when I was first getting to know her, Sheila said this as well, they were both together. I asked her, how long have you been here? And she told me it's been a long time. And I was like, wow, so you were here in the 70s for the disco era? And she's like, oh yes, the disco. Sheila and I used to go out to the discos in Saint Germain. Now, I want you to take a look at Connie and take a look at Sheila and imagine them 50 years younger, because that's how long disco has been around, cutting a rug out there on some disco on Saint Germain. I think they can probably still do it, because, you know, whatever age they are now is the new 30. So there you go. That's my little tribute to Connie. Plus a little, you know, hat tip to Sheila along the way too, because they've been writing partners for so long. But in any case, Connie, I owe you a lot. I can never really repay that debt. You put up with a lot, but like a good Italian mama, we fought, we did our screaming Italian thing, and the next day we carried on, which is what all Italians do, as I said. So there, I'll stop nattering now. Thank you for indulging me. Thank you, Connie, for everything that you've done on so many different levels. And thank you, Ada, for hosting this event.
Wow. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, everyone. We are coming up on the hour. I think Adrian George, is Adrian still with us? Adrian?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. Hey, lady. Good to see you on the call. Adrian George, DNC representative based in Sweden. She, you know, anyway, glad to have you on the call.
Thank you. And I just want to say, Santé, Connie, je t'aime bien. Tu me manques très, très fort. I can't imagine continuing on with the Democratic National Convention without you. I have learned so much from you, how to serve our members with graciousness, class, and you're never late for anything. I don't know what Martha said, but we were 4 in a room, and I'm going to miss that so much, not just because it helped me save money, which is very important, but because I got to learn so much from you. And wake up in the morning, you would be 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and your face would be glow, that green glow, because you were already on your iMac saying, I got to write back to France. I got to report to what's happening in France. And as other people have said, you're a policy person. You drill down the issues. You're like, I know what my members want to know about, and you taught me that I need to report back in a certain way back to Sweden, as well as to the membership at large. I want to thank you for your graciousness. I don't have it on right now, but you gave me a set of red, white, and blue beads that you had gotten from some DNC member one of our territories. You had 2 sets and I begged you and you gave me one. And I can remember the first time I met you. Well, first of all, I should say thanks to Bob. Bob Valle told me that I needed to know you if I was going to do anything in Democrats Abroad. He was like, you got to know Connie. And I met you in Scotland at a regional meeting for the first time. And I think I had on some thigh-high boots or something, or some leggings. And you were like, you just made me feel so good. And you're always the cutest little thing in the room whenever I see you. And I just always, I'm just so enamored with you because you not only your mother, the way you talk about your grandkids, how proud that you are of them. I think about your daughter, your granddaughter who's working in COVID. She's a doctor, baptism by fire in Ireland, and you're always a proud woman, a proud mother. You talk about Dominic, you know, you're a proud wife, you know, you're a proud Massachusetts, is that a word? But you're just a proud everything. You just set the bar so high for me. And I only hope that I can reach it. And I just missed, when I decided to run for re-election, for DNC, and you said you weren't, it made me stumble back. And I thought, should I do it? Can I do it without Connie? But what I know is that I can do it without Connie because you will always be with me. Every lesson that you taught me, everything that you showed me. When we walk into a room, everybody knows Connie. Everybody loves Connie. Everybody runs up to Connie. I can remember in the 2016 campaign when there was something that DA members, you couldn't say you were from Democrats Abroad, and you're like, oh, the person's on the vineyard with me, I'll talk to her, and the next day it was fixed. You are a doer. You're not just a talker, you're a doer, and you do it with such class and graciousness and such beauty. And I only hope that I can emulate you. Tu me manques, je t'aime bien.
You're there, girl, you're there.
Sante. Ada, thank you, Joe. Thank you for inviting me tonight. I'm sorry I'm late, but thank you for getting me in on the end. I couldn't have missed this for the world. Connie, I love you. I hope to see you in Paris soon, and you're always, always welcome to Sweden.
I think Connie should have the last word. We're now just a minute past the hour. Connie, would you like to say a few words in closing?
I'm speechless. I'm speechless, especially after the Bob Valle tribute. I mean, I'm speechless. Listen, I know.
That was the goal. That was the goal, Connie, to make you speechless.
Well, you did. You did. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. And Ada, bon courage. I'll be there whenever you need it.
Thank you.
Ada is bringing Democrats Abroad to new heights. I can tell you that. First of all, I don't do Instagram. So.
Shoulders of giants.
Okay.
Shoulders of giants. All right. Thank you all, everyone. Thank you to all the people who've hung in there for all 2 hours of this tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our host committee. Thank you to all of you. Without you, we cannot do this work. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you, Connie.
Thank you, Ada.
We love you, Connie.
Thank you, Connie. We love you so much. We're going to miss you.
We love you, Connie. Yay.
Julia, thank you. Thank you for being there. I know you have so much to do.
Oh, of course, for you, always.
Thank you.
Connie, we have a meeting tomorrow at 7:15. Remember.
I know, Joe.
Oh, that's so Joe. Okay.